Hi there! Welcome back to my series breaking down the musical themes in Final Fantasy XVI. In Part 1, we covered all the character themes, in Part 2, the location themes, and in Part 3, the battle theme, Final Fantasy Legacy themes, and the more memorable one-off tracks. Well, we are back for one last rodeo with Clive and the gang as we go over all the music released in the two pieces of Final Fantasy XVI DLC, Echoes of the Fallen and The Rising Tide. I finally played both pieces of DLC and made two key observations. One, wow, was I always this bad at FF16? That seemed hard as nails. And two, the soundtrack follows a similar format to the base game, which is to say I counted 19 new pieces of music across both pieces of DLC, and every single one of them is drawing from a small pool of character and location themes. So let me break these down for you, theme by theme, to make sense of all of this noise. Oh, and one last thing. As of this recording, the official soundtrack for both pieces of DLC has not yet been released, so there is a lot of, as of now, obscured information. Back at the Hideaway, we can access a few of these new tracks from the Orchestrion, so we have the official track names for 5 of the 19 new pieces. As such, any track names listed in quotes and italicized are my placeholder names. If the music from the DLC gets an official soundtrack release, I'll post the real names and credits on the tracks in the comments below. Anyhow, let's get started. The first piece of DLC, Echoes of the Fallen, was released on PlayStation 5 on December 7th, 2023, and follows Clive, Jill, and Joshua as they explore the Sage Spire, an ancient fallen facility once used for making all sorts of evil sciencey things. It's that inaccessible tower just north of East Pool that screamed DLC bait. Echoes of the Fallen is a relatively short piece of DLC, and as such it only has 3 new pieces of music. The Worm Mounts, what I am calling Code Red, and Iconoclasm. I'll play these for you a bit later, but for now it's time to introduce the theme that links these 3 tracks together. Our first theme of the day belongs to the dimensional hopping entity known as Omega, which has appeared in a half dozen or so Final Fantasy games. Like the arguably more popular boss character Gilgamesh, the character's interdimensional capabilities means you can make a somewhat compelling argument that the Omega you first meet in Final Fantasy V is the same one that makes an appearance throughout the rest of the series. But unlike Gilgamesh, Omega didn't really have a recurring theme that would help unify its cross-dimensional franchise-hopping appearances. That is, until Masayoshi Soken decided to rectify this when Omega made its debut in Final Fantasy XIV. In FF14, Omega shows up as a raid boss in, appropriately enough, the Interdimensional Rift. As you fight Omega, you are introduced to Omega's brand spanking new theme. Composed and arranged by Masayoshi Soken, Escape is one hell of a banger. Described by its lyricist Michael Christopher Koji Fox as a cosmic sea shanty, the track barrels around with a few very strong anthemic hooks and has spawned several variations throughout FF14's ongoing lifespan. The Shadowbringers remix in particular, A Long Fall, might even have eclipsed the original in terms of popularity. And if you hadn't guessed it, this FF14 Omega theme is the one that all 3 tracks from Echoes of the Fallen are based on. There are 3 main sections of Escape that are of interest to us, so let's break them down. The first passage is Escape's opening verse, a simple 5-note call and response style melody. Not the most harmonic melody of all time, but with the frequency with which it gets repeated, it will certainly become an earworm. This part in particular has become quite popular within the Final Fantasy XIV community, spawning memes based on misheard lyrics and a whole dance routine embraced by the devs. Needless to say, this passage shows up in all 3 tracks from Echoes of the Fallen. It is the main hook of both Code Red, which is the track that plays when you're on the upper echelons of the Sage Spire, and Iconoclasm, the hyper-frenetic boss track against Omega. Its presence in The Worm Mounts, the general Sage Spire area theme, is a subtler affair. Here, the melody has been transformed into the delicate piano line that guides the entire track. Sure, it's 6 notes now instead of 5, and it's missing the response melody, but the motif is undeniable. Please let me know in the comments if the motif is deniable. Lastly, this leitmotif bookends your entire experience playing through Echoes of the Fallen, showing up as the quest jingle, divided across its call and response melodies. I thought that was a pretty neat touch. The second passage is Escape's pre-chorus, which has a more syncopated rhythm with great build-up potential. It sounds like this. Just like with the first passage, the way it shows up in The Worm Mounts on the piano is subtle and easy to miss. I should mention that, just like a handful of exploration tracks in the base game, the Worm Mounts arrangement dynamically adapts to a more intense, percussive arrangement when you enter battle, and it's only during this battle phase that you can make out the outline of Escape's second passage. I'll play them back to back to help make it clearer. There is a lot going on in Code Red, some of which I'll talk about later, but I couldn't make out any references to this second passage from Escape. But its inclusion in Iconoclasm is easier to spot, and personally speaking, the vocal effects Soken employs for this section doubles as quality nightmare fuel. Yikes, I do not like that one bit. Soken has a history of affecting his voice with the strangest, gnarliest vocal effects known to man, but I think this one might take the cake. Anyhow, the third and final passage is Escape's rousing chorus, which I absolutely adore. Man, I'm sometimes not on the same wavelength as Soken when it comes to some of his butt rock ideations, but that chorus is just huge. However, as good as that chorus is, it isn't originally from Escape. The earliest iteration of that leitmotif I can find is in Final Fantasy XIV's Order Yet Undeciphered, the field theme of... I don't know how to pronounce this thing. Azizla? There's a couple more triplets in that melody, but you can see how it spawned the cadence of Escape's chorus. Aziz La is an ancient science and research center created by the old Allagan Empire, which sounds a whole lot like Final Fantasy XVI's Sage Spire to me. I've heard this leitmotif a whole bunch in the Stormblood soundtrack, but since I haven't played much past Heavensward yet, I'm not the person who should be talking about its use in those later expansions. There's also a section that sounds like the second passage of Omega in there too. But I could just be hearing things. Maybe someone in the comments section can speak more authoritatively on this motif. Anyhow, for this video's sake, I'm mostly talking about the Omega version from Escape and the Aziz La version from Order Yet Undeciphered. And you better believe this passage shows up in all 3 Echoes of the Fallen tracks. Here it is, soft and delicate in The Worm Mounts. Listen out for the swirling melody more indicative of the original Aziz La version. In Code Red, they flip the script by having the track open with this section, while Iconoclasm sounds about how you would expect a breakbeat version of the track to play out. And that's it for the Omega theme. But before moving on to the Rising Tide DLC, I was wondering if some of you might be able to help me with something. Try as I might, there is a highly memorable section in Code Red that I can't wrap my head around. I can't figure out where it's from. Let me play it for you. It doesn't seem to refer back to the Omega theme, and I've racked my brain trying to think of a relevant older Uematsu Final Fantasy track that Soken might be referencing, but I can't think of any. But since my knowledge of FF14 is pretty spotty, especially Endwalker onwards, I'm wondering if maybe it comes from there? If someone can figure out where this is from, they'll get a super sweet shout out in, I guess my next FF7 Rebirth video, since this is likely my last ever FF16 video. Sure, they could be entirely new compositions, but that would be quite an outlier, since just about every single other melody in both Echoes of the Fallen and The Rising Tide can be traced back to a known body of themes. But who knows? Well, hopefully one of you does, because I don't feel great leaving the Echoes of the Fallen score in this not entirely solved state. Or, like with the FF16 battle theme showing up in its first incarnation in Stormblood back in 2018, maybe we are getting a taste of a melody from a future Final Fantasy project. Who knows? It's probably from Dawn Trail, right? I gotta get that Dawn Trail soundtrack. The Rising Tide expansion was released for PlayStation 5 on April 18th, 2024, and if you felt a bit shortchanged by the Echoes of the Fallen expansion, then I've got some good news for you. The Rising Tide is a much more substantial piece of DLC, with several beautifully varied areas to explore, 2 whole new iconic skill sets to master, a slew of side quests that I did not do, and even an entirely new roguelike game mode. Frankly, FF16's take on the classic Tonberry design is worth the price of admission alone. But none of that matters to us. What's really exciting is that it includes 16 new pieces of music. Sure, some of these are just 30-second cutscene stingers, but across the board these are very lovely tracks, and unlike the 3 Echoes of the Fallen tracks that pull from just one pre-existing Final Fantasy XIV melody, the Rising Tide tracks draw from a more varied, inspired mix of themes. We have callbacks to pre-existing 14 and 16 themes, but also a couple new themes. Let's dive into it. The first theme we are properly introduced to is the general exploration theme while we are traversing the northern lands of Mysidia. This theme shows up in 6 tracks. I will be using the track Writ in Water to cover its various passages, and it sounds like this. Whoa, wait a minute. That's the wrong Mysidia. There we go. It's a nice breezy track that suits the luscious, forested environments of Mysidia. It is also unmistakably from Soken's sound team, reminding me a lot of some of the exploration tracks from the base game, such as Rosaria's Forevermore. Anyhow, there are about 4 passages to the Mysidia theme. The first one is the most common and function as Writ in Water's verse. You can pretty easily make out this melody in the 2 brief cutscene stinger tracks, Rising Tidal and Mysidia Lookout. But its inclusion elsewhere is more subtle. You won't notice it at first in Bid Time Return, the track that plays while you are near the frozen tsunami known as the Surge, but once you encounter an enemy, the dynamic battle variant brings in the missing melodies. You can also hear it at the beginning of Safe Haven, the track that plays within Mysidia's lone human settlement. But just like with the Worm Mounts, the arranger has obscured much of the melody by transforming its rhythm in intervals, leaving us with only the silhouette of the motif. The pre-chorusy second passage sounds great, thanks to a reverby snare rim hit that moves us over to a halftime rhythm. The 12-string guitar, low in the mix, is a fantastic addition too. This passage only shows up in Writ in Water and in the battle variant of Bid Time Return, with an equally fun rhythmic foundation. I think I prefer the version outside of battle, which doesn't have the melody, but you can better make out the percussive vibraphone or xylophone. Sounds cool. Speaking of variants of tracks that omit the melody line, Writ in Water has an easy-to-miss alternate arrangement that plays exclusively from the moment you first land in Mysidia up until you reach the first cliff looking out over its land, at which point it shifts to the arrangement I've been showcasing so far. this arrangement sticks to that slower halftime feel and uses a sparser arrangement that allows that 12-string guitar I mentioned earlier to stand out a bit more. I think I prefer this version of the arrangement, so next time you're playing through The Rising Tide, take your time exploring the early parts of the DLC. Following the halftime section, there's a lovely chorus that doesn't really get repeated in any of the other tracks, so I'm just going to jump over that one. Next is Written Water's Bridge. Sounds pretty good. It shows up again in Bid Time Returns Battle variant, but that's it. To my surprise, everyone's favorite antagonist from Damon Lindelof's misunderstood masterpiece, Prometheus, makes a return, monologuing about how Clive has done nothing but fallen further into his little trap and that this was all very deliberate and thought out, actually. As Ultima yaps on and we see the aftermath of unfreezing the baby dominant, we get two new variations of Ultima's theme. Oh, and speaking of Ultima, a user named Shadow the Hedgehog 181 left a fantastic comment on my Part 3 video, pointing out another reference to Final Fantasy XIV I had completely missed. In The Final Temptation, there's an ascending-descending string pattern fairly prominent in the mix that's lifted right from Echoes of Ages Past, an old track from A Realm Reborn. You could initially chalk this up to Soken reutilizing a similar rhythmic pattern for convenience's sake, but Shadow the Hedgehog 181 makes a very compelling and logical case as to why this is a deliberate callback. Thank you, Shadow. Alright, we have one last major theme to cover, and we are going out with a bang. Leviathan's theme shows up in 8 tracks, making it the most popular theme across both pieces of DLC. As far as Dominance themes go, it is on the simpler side, having only 2 primary recurring passages, but it makes up for that with some surprising metatextual resonance. What is likely to be the very last leitmotif you'll hear in Final Fantasy XVI is actually the very first one ever introduced to us, nearly 3 years before the launch of the game, in fact. All the way back in September 2020, during Sony's reveal showcase of the PlayStation 5, Square Enix dropped the very first trailer for Final Fantasy XVI. What is known as the Awakening trailer, it features a few familiar tracks from what would become the Final Fantasy XVI soundtrack. But it's in the back half of the trailer that things become more mysterious. A fast-paced orchestra and frenzied rhythm section leads way to a ginormous male choir.
The legacy of the crystals has shaped our history.
Afterwards, we are left with a haunting female vocal line, some bass strings, and the harp playing the Final Fantasy prelude.
I'll kill you. If it's the last thing I do.
It's a fantastic introduction to the tone of the game, but we never hear that theme again. In all of Final Fantasy XVI, it never shows up. It's trailer music, nothing else. That is, until the arrival of the Rising Tide. After years of folks asking Soken what's the deal with the Awakening music, he finally gave us an answer. The Awakening theme is Leviathan's theme. How cool is that? Okay, if I can be a buzzkill for half a second, I'll say I don't think it musically meshes super well with the water god Leviathan, nor its baby dominant Walia, especially if you compare it to the other dominance themes in the base game, which all do such masterful jobs at evoking the humans controlling the icons. Ifrit's theme burns with Clive's revenge and hints at his tenderness. Garuda's theme is awash with Benedicta's melancholy. Bahamut's has all the pageantry and heartbreak of its dominant. Titan's is big and loud. Odin's perfectly conveys the manic killer that controls him. Shiva's is poetic and a bit saccharine, but Leviathan's is, I don't know, big and epic? Soft and tender? I guess that does an okay job of representing the two sides of the baby's main pastime, peaceful sleeping and screaming terror. Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it works super well as a Leviathan theme, but I think this is pretty forgivable because of how poetic it is to have the Awakening music come full circle, bookending the Final Fantasy XVI experience. So overall, it works with me. I'll be using Cascade to go over its sections. Cascade is the track that plays in the final phase of the Leviathan boss fight at the very end of the game. As I mentioned before, there are two equally important yet emotionally distinct passages within Leviathan's theme. I'm going to do things differently for this last section. Instead of going over these two passages separately and jumping back and forth, I'd like to cover both of them in tandem, since one or both phrases appears almost in every track in The Rising Tide. Anyhow, the first passage is the very deep and masculine, uplifting melody that I'm calling the A motif. And the B motif is the more ethereal, melancholic phrase. If we rewind back to the very, very beginning of the DLC, we get our first taste of the B motif as we accept the Rising Tide's first quest back at the Hideaway. Next, as we take a ship with Shula across the ocean to Mysidia, we hear the B motif, once again, as the title card reveals itself. We already covered the next few tracks, since those ones feature the Mysidia theme exclusively. It isn't until we reach the human settlement, where Safe Haven plays, that the Leviathan melody becomes more apparent. The A motif in particular has such a gentle, soothing energy when it isn't being belted out by an aggressive male choir. Here it is on an acoustic guitar, followed by a flute. Chord change at the end sounds so much like Super Nintendo era Uematsu to me, especially Final Fantasy IV. Considering we are in Mysidia, of all places, a reference to Final Fantasy IV wouldn't be all that surprising. What do you think? Am I reading into things too much again? The B motif on the acoustic guitar is lovely as well. When Clive reaches the baby dominant for the first time and yoinks his aqua power, the ensuing cutscene gives us our first taste of the B motif with a female choir evocative of its original awakening incarnation. The next time we hear the dueling Leviathan motifs is in the ruins literally frozen in time known as the Air of Hours, whatever exactly that means. This area has its own dungeon theme of sorts, with a colder, more electronic instrumentation compared to the other Rising tracks we've heard so far, which are almost exclusively arranged with organic and acoustic sounding instruments. It sounds cool, almost like a Kid A era Radiohead track. Here, the Leviathan A motif appears on a trebly, echoing piano, followed by the B motif on synthy strings. After an electrifying boss fight against the Timekeeper, there's a cutscene of Clive triumphantly unfreezing time. Both motifs are present in this short cutscene track. As the water begins to flow again and you race towards the heart of the storm, a slightly different version of the Air of Hours track plays, where you can hear the same two passages once again. This track is so similar to the one that plays in the Air of Hours, and I wonder if it began its life as a battle variant for it, before being spun off as its own track and moved to this slightly later point in the DLC. Afterwards, it's Leviathan time. One last big, flashy, iconic duel, for old time's sake. And you know you're in for something epic when the boss fight has 4 tracks. It starts the same way as all the other Icon battles did, with the classic To Sail the Forbidden Seas. And upon reaching the first checkpoint of the battle, we move over to what I'm very creatively calling Leviathan Phase 2. You can hear what sounds a bit like a marching band procession playing the Leviathan A and B motifs on brass. once we get through this second phase of the fight, we get to, for my money, the most frustrating section in all of Final Fantasy XVI. Even on easy mode, I got drenched by Leviathan's tsunami a good half dozen times before finally making it through. Also, this brief, or in my case longest phase, has its own track, and surprise, it doesn't feature the Final Fantasy XVI Leviathan theme. It features the Final Fantasy XIV Leviathan theme. Anyhow, if you are able to prevent Leviathan's tsunami, you reach the last phase of the battle and are finally rewarded with Cascade, that awakening trailer music you've been champing at the bit for. Cascade has everything you'd hope for and then some. There's even a new third passage that hasn't shown up yet in the soundtrack. Cascade earns its hype and stands up there with the other epic icon tracks from the base game. Congratulations to Soken and the rest of the Final Fantasy XVI sound team for this one. But we're not quite done. As the highly volatile baby descends from the sky, we get one last new track to close things out. Just like in the base game, which graced us with beautiful piano arrangements of just about every single character and location theme, this closer gives us the same, doing great justice to Leviathans. You can even hear that third motif. It's a beautiful way to close the book, not just on the rising tide, but our entire Final Fantasy XVI adventure. That's it. Actually, no, there's one more thing. In part 2 of my video series, I asked folks to guess which character theme I had omitted in part 1. The answer was Torgal, obviously, which I covered in part 3, but shortly after publishing that video, the user Sarv205 had a way better suggestion. Can you guess what it was? No? Ready? It's Martha, of Martha's Rest fame. Yeah, that's a good answer. Sarv, if you're still watching these, well done. Also, as I was about to export this video, I got a comment from Fennec VG who pointed out that a part of Hugo's theme shows up in the FF14 Titans theme. Good find. Thank you, Fennec. Okay, with that, I think we are done for real. Like, for real, for real. I don't see Square putting out another round of DLC for 16, but I guess you never know. It's gotta be done by now, surely. Apologies to all the folks that have been waiting many months for this DLC episode. To be completely transparent, I put off playing the DLC and making this video because I incorrectly assumed this DLC score would be of a similar scale to Final Fantasy VII Remake's Yuffie DLC. But mercifully, this was much more modest. I should have made this video months ago. Thank you very much for waiting for this one and sticking around to the end. If you haven't watched my Final Fantasy VII Rebirth music analysis videos, I encourage you to check those out too. If you thought these 16 videos went deep, the Rebirth videos are on another level. There is currently almost 2 hours of videos on my page analyzing all 40 tracks from the opening chapter of Rebirth, with many more hours to come. Unless something changes at my end, expect the next video I post to be the start of Chapter 2 of Rebirth. And in between Rebirth chapters, I'll post music analysis videos unrelated to it, just like how this FF16 DLC vid is sandwiched between chapters 1 and 2 of Rebirth. As for what those in-between videos will be about, I have nothing to announce on that front just yet, which is to say I haven't decided, though I have several ideas. If you have any ideas or suggestions, I'm all ears. Also, it would mean a lot to me if you shared this video or this entire FF16 series with friends or on social media. These videos take an embarrassing amount of hours to produce, and validation from strangers on the internet is my main form of sustenance. I would not have made any videos past the Part 1 character themes video if it wasn't for all the very encouraging comments. So thank you all so much. Okay, that's it. Take care. Bye.